just, the sort of standard, how did this all come about? I think at the time of Moon, it was announced that your next film was going to be a movie called Mute, and this kind of breaks the pattern of four-letter titles starting with M. Was that a big point of departure?
I tried to get them to rename it. They wouldn't do it. Yeah, I mean, I actually tried to make Mute before I made Moon, and it was definitely too ambitious for a first feature film. And it was definitely the right call, to do Moon first. But I did have, these aspirations that I would have the chance to make Mute next, and that was one of the reasons I was able to meet up with Jake Gyllenhaal. He'd seen Moon and seemed to very much like it. I'm a huge admirer of his and really wanted to work with him. And we met up to discuss what I hoped was going to be Mute. And he said, I had this great script, you should really have a read on. And he gave me source code. And I went home and I read it, and I was, I actually thought, I think there's something I can do with this. There's something I can do with this. And yeah, I loved the pace of it. I was really interested in the science fiction conceit at the heart of it. And it seemed to do so many things. There was a romance to it. There was the opportunity to really put some humor into it. And in my mind, it was so different than Moon. After the fact, I realized it's actually not as different in some ways.
Very many symmetries, including the actor being in a very tightly confined space. Maybe talk a little bit actually about your interest in science fiction as a genre and what some of your influences were.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely consider myself a science fiction fan. My dad always liked me to read every evening. For an hour or two a night, we would try and make sure that I read something growing up. And if I was finding it difficult or frustrating, whatever it was I was reading at the time, science fiction was kind of my candy. That was to sort of lure me into reading more. So whether it was George Orwell's Animal Farm or John Wyndham's Day of the Trippids, or later on Philip K. Dick and J.G. Ballard and William Gibson, those were the things that I really kind of enjoyed. So that's kind of what started my science fiction interests. But I loved the opportunity to look at what-if stories. To take, even if like J.G. Ballard, where you sort of look at the world very much as it is, and then just tweak one thing and just change it slightly and say, yeah, but what if the world were like this? And then it sort of gives you a whole new perspective on the world that we live in.
And just in case there's a few people out there who don't know who your dad is, maybe you can say.
He's a musician.
Talk about the physical shoot of this movie as opposed to Moon, which, if I recall, was supposedly on such an elaborate set that people had to enter through an airlock, basically, like people on a space station. Here, obviously, some stuff that's in a set, but a lot that's on location also. How is that different in terms of conceiving the look of the film, the style of the film?
There were many similarities. I mean, there were some difference, but there were many similarities. And I can't help but think that Jake's optimism that I would be the right person to work on this film was the fact that I have dealt with claustrophobic environments and had managed to visually keep them looking quite varied. Because there's the interior of the train, which is a set that we built in Montreal. Most of the shoot was in Montreal. So there's the interior of the train. There was what we call the pod, which is this sort of holding area in between missions for Colter. And then the lab environment where Vera Farmiga and Jeffrey Wright are based. And those were all in Montreal. We built the exterior of the train station in a parking lot, also in Montreal as well. And we can talk about that a little bit, because there was this constant desire to try and seed the film with ideas and influences and occasional in-jokes as well. There's sort of Hitchcock vibe that we wanted in the film, from the opening source code title and graphics. Sorry, I'm going off on one now.
Well, and the Bernard Herrmann-esque score.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clock towers on the platform and on the train station, and the way that Jake is dressed in this sort of fairly traditional jacket tie that's a little bit out of period. And then, of course, the score itself.
Well, and there is, I mean, even though it's a science fiction movie, there is the sort of feeling of film noir, of, the one man who knows what everyone else doesn't know, that kind of a vibe to it. I mean, what are some of outside of science fiction, some of the films and the filmmakers and genres that have inspired you?
Outside of science fiction, for me, I know that Ben Ripley, who wrote the script, he obviously had his own influences. But for me, it was films like 39 Steps and North by Northwest. We were trying to find a couple of Hitchcock vibes. The idea of a mysterious dame on a train and an ordinary guy who finds himself in outrageous circumstances and trying to work out what's going on. It seemed fairly classic. Other than the science fiction ideas, it was a very traditional story in many ways.
And of course, those movies did have a strong comic component to them as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah.
And I mean, of course, 39 Steps was turned into a Broadway comedy recently, but is it difficult to find that balance between the serious elements and the comedic elements? And how much of that was in the script, and how much of that was something you were finessing in the performances and in the editing room?
I think one of the reasons Jake and I clicked very early on is we both felt that the script structurally was very sound. We loved the pace of it, but we both felt that the film would probably work better if we injected humor into it, if we found a way to lighten the tone. I felt the script took itself quite seriously. There was some sort of on-the-nose comic moments, but the whole thing took itself quite seriously, and that was sort of one thing I wanted to do. That was kind of my interpretation of it, was to try and lighten it. And because we shot the scenes in the train first, that was really, that was the first opportunity we had to really set that tone. And the interplay between Michelle and Jake and the other passengers on the train, that was a fun few opening weeks, because we really had the opportunity to push it a little too far and go a little bit surreal with it. And then in the edit, working with the master, Paul Hirsch, we had the opportunity to really fine-tune it and set the tone.